Halloween isn't just one night, it's a season that remembers every candle, every mask, every whisper between the trees. It leaves something behind. Halloween isn't over yet, so grab a drink, grab your blanket, and have a seat at the fire. You are just in time. Welcome to Static and Embers. They say the first night of Halloween week belongs to the Watchers, the ones who walk before the dead do. You don't hear them, you just start noticing less of yourself in the mirror and more of them behind you. It started in towns that still hang paper ghosts in windows and leave candy bowls out early. Dusk came earlier that Monday, and people began posting about shadows, not moving ones, just standing in driveways, at the edges of yards, on the tree line. No faces, no features, just silhouettes, too tall for the ground they stood on. At first, people thought it was a prank, some Halloween stunt, but then every photo showed the same figure, same distance from the house, no matter the street, as if it wasn't moving, but the world around it was. Someone noticed the pattern. On Monday, they appear far from town. Tuesday, they're at the tree line. By Wednesday, the sidewalks. Thursday, they stand in the yard. And on Friday night, Halloween, they're at your door. Someone found a camcorder in an empty car near Elm Creek last year. Inside was one video, time-stamped the Friday before Halloween. The man filming was out of breath, whispering that something had followed him home. He turned the camera toward his house. The porch light flickered, and there, behind him, stood a figure taller than the doorway. When the light went out, the tape ended, but in the reflection of the window, you can see it move. I used to think the stories were just another internet scare, until tonight. It's Monday again, the first night of Halloween week, and there's something standing at the end of my driveway. No flashlight, no face, just watching, waiting for dusk to end. Every minute it's closer. If you see one tonight, don't look away. They only move when the dark does. Halloween week has begun. Keep your lights on. Stay close to the fire. And if you see them watching, it's already too late. October 31st, tickets to the Hollow Creek Asylum Experience, one of those over-the-top haunted house attractions built inside a real abandoned state hospital. The couple, Jenna and Luke, had been together 5 years. They weren't thrill seekers, not really. They just wanted something different that Halloween. But when they pulled into that cracked asphalt parking lot, they noticed the actors never broke character. Even the ones just standing by the fence, their heads turned slightly like they were watching the crowd come closer. Inside, the guide handed everyone flashlights with red filters. "Stay together," she said. "Don't go off the marked path." The first few rooms were just props and fog machines, fake blood, actors in straitjackets, the usual jump scares. But then, in the hydrotherapy ward, the power flickered and stayed out. Total black. Another flashlight clicked on, and they realized the tour guide was gone. The intercom system crackled to life, a voice repeating, "Tour Group 4 remain in place. Security is en route." Only there was no Group 4. Luke said maybe it was part of the show, but Jenna swore she saw something in the dark, a shape crouched low to the floor, its hands scraping the tile. They started down the corridor toward what they thought was the exit, but every door led to the same hallway, the same stains on the walls, the same flickering sign that read, "Ward closed, do not enter." And behind that door, voices, layered, overlapping, laughing and crying all at once. The intercom came back on. "The Hollow Creek Asylum thanks you for your participation in tonight's event. Please remember, if you feel someone breathing on your neck, do not turn around." Jenna whispered Luke's name. He didn't answer, just turned slowly toward her, eyes rolled white, whispering something in a voice that wasn't his. She ran. Every hallway led back to the same locked door, and somewhere behind her, Luke, or what used to be Luke, called her name again. When police arrived the next morning, they found the attraction empty. No staff, no actors, just one woman sitting in the hydrotherapy room, rocking back and forth in the dark. And behind her, recordings from the building's PA system still played on loop. That same cheery voice, "Thank you for visiting the Hollow Creek Asylum Experience. Please exit through the gift shop. Only the recording wasn't from this year. It was from a Halloween tour that shut down in 1998 after every single guest disappeared. There's a lost radio call that only surfaces once a year. It's not a prank. It's not staged. It's from Halloween night decades ago, a man's last transmission before he vanished. What you're about to hear wasn't supposed to be heard again. The recording starts normal. A man driving home late, his CB radio picking up chatter from other drivers. But then this voice cuts in, shaky, uneasy. Yeah, I've got someone standing in the middle of the road up ahead. Can't tell if it's a kid in a costume or something else. At first, he thought it was a trick-or-treater who got lost. It was Halloween night, after all. They're not dressed right. Looks like old clothes. Maybe a costume? I can't tell. They're just standing there, not moving. Their heads kind of tilted. Another driver laughs it off, says it's probably some teenager pulling a stunt, but the man doesn't laugh. His breathing is heavy. He slows down. He says the headlights hit it full on, but it didn't blink, didn't shield its eyes, just stared straight ahead. It's not right. The face, it doesn't look like a mask. It's eyes. The figure starts walking. They're coming toward me now. Jesus, they're tall. Too tall. They're right in front of the truck now. I swear they're smiling. Their mouth, it's too wide, like the skin's pulling wrong. I can see teeth, rows of them. The voice wavers. There's movement on the line. Something scraping metal. The rustle of a door handle. The transmission started breaking up. All that could be heard was, "Can't move. Help." The transmission cuts. Silence. Then seconds later, his voice returns, screaming. The call ends there. Highway Patrol found his rig the next morning, still idling. Driver's door open. No blood, no footprints, just deep scratches across the hood, like something had dragged its nails across the steel. They say if you drive on that road on Halloween night, your radio will pick up his last transmission. If you hear someone whisper your name through the static, don't answer. You might think you know the story of Halloween. Costumes, candy, jack-o'-lanterns glowing on porches, but that's not where it started. Long before the word Halloween existed, there was Samhain, and it wasn't about fun. It was about surviving the night when the dead came home. They called it the end of the harvest, the death of the year. When the final fires burned and the veil between two worlds grew thin enough to see through, cattle were brought down from the hills. The sick and the old were kept close to the hearth, and in the fields the druids lit great bonfires, not to celebrate, but to warn the dead they were not welcome here. They left offerings on the roads, food, milk, coins, not for charity, for appeasement, because on this night the dead could walk, and not all of them remembered how to leave. People dressed in animal skins and painted their faces with ash to fool the wandering spirits. If the dead couldn't tell who was living and who wasn't, they might pass you by. When you wear a costume on Halloween night, you're following the same ritual. You're not celebrating the dead. You're hiding from them. And the jack-o'-lantern, that wasn't meant to look festive. It was a face carved to scare something back into the dark. But there's a part of the story that never made it into children's books. A version whispered in Ireland and later Scotland that on the night before Samhain, the first souls to rise weren't the ones you'd mourned. They were the ones denied burial, the ones cast out, forgotten, or cursed. And once the door opened for them, something else slipped through. Something that had never been human at all. They said if you stared into the fire too long that night, you could see it. A shape forming in the smoke, watching, waiting for its name to be spoken again. Now, every year, we light candles, carve faces, and hang plastic skeletons, but none of it's for decoration. It's instinct. Something in us still remembers. The veil thins again tonight. The air gets colder. And if you feel that heaviness, that silence that settles just before midnight, don't call it superstition. Call it what it is. Samhain never ended. It just learned to wear a mask. Tomorrow the door opens, and when it does, don't stand too close to the fire. Halloween isn't the end, it's the opening. Halloween night, the last of the candy's been handed out. The porch lights are going dark. and the streets have gone still. But on one quiet street in 1979, a woman opened her door one last time. She wasn't expecting anyone else. Trick-or-treating had ended hours ago, but when she heard the knock, she smiled, grabbed the candy bowl, and opened the door. Standing there was someone tall in a handmade costume, burlap hood, bone white mask, rope stitched down the sleeves. Old-fashioned, unsettling. He didn't say a word. He reached out, and the knife caught the porch light. Neighbors later said they heard a muffled scream, but it was Halloween. No one thought twice. They found her the next morning on her front lawn, arms stretched toward the road. Neighbors thought it was a decoration, but when the police arrived, they realized her throat had been cut right there on the grass. Here's where the story turns. Because that house, the one she lived in, had its own history. 50 years earlier, there was a man named Abner Crow. He led a small circle that believed a life taken on All Hallows Eve could transfer the victim's remaining years to whoever performed the ritual. Abner killed 5 people before the townsfolk caught on. They found him on the lawn of that very house and killed him right there, just before he could reach his final target, the woman who lived in that house. They said his last words were, "I'll finish what I started." Decades later, a man found something strange at a flea market. An old soot-stained book bound in cracked leather filled with sketches of masks, ritual markings, and words in the language no one recognized. And on one page, the very costume he'd been wearing that night. He said it fascinated him. He only wanted to recreate the costume for Halloween. It took weeks. Once he started sewing, he couldn't stop. But once it was finished, he said every night when he looked at the mask, he felt something staring back through it. Police caught him a few days after the murder. A man with no record, quiet, polite. They said he didn't resist. When they asked why he did it, his voice sounded different, strained, layered, like 2 voices fighting to speak at once. "It wasn't me," he said. They found the costume, still wet with blood. Now, every Halloween night, neighbors say they see someone standing by that same porch light, a tall figure in a burlap hood, waiting, as if another page still needs to be written. So if someone knocks on your door long after trick-or-treating's over, check the porch light first. If it flickers, don't open it. He never finished. They say when the clock clicks past 12:01 on November 1st, most masks come off, and most of them go back. Most. Old folks call them the ones who stayed. Not ghosts, not people, just leftovers. They borrowed faces for Halloween, crossed the fence for the night, and when the veil snapped shut, they didn't make it back. You can spot them if you know what you're looking for. Their clothes are too clean. Their smiles don't wrinkle the eyes, and when they blink, it's late, like they're waiting for a cue you can't hear. If you pass one on the sidewalk, they'll step aside with perfect manners and say, "After you," like they practice the line all night and don't know any others. The old rule says, don't greet anyone you didn't recognize yesterday. If they learned your name on Halloween, they keep it like a candy unwrapped slowly in the dark. And if you gave out candy after midnight, just after, you gave them permission to come back for seconds. There's a story around here about a man who left a bowl out with a polite little sign. He forgot to bring it in. Morning came, the porch was swept clean, the sign folded carefully under the bowl. That night, November 1st, he heard a soft voice at the glass. "Is it all gone?" He didn't answer. He didn't breathe. The voice said thank you anyway. They walk the daylight like tourists, learning. They copy the exact laugh someone used at the party down the street. They borrow the way the cashier said, "Have a good one." They don't like sharp sounds. They flinch at closing gates, the clatter of a dropped pan. If one learns your path, work, home, that alley you cut through, they'll walk half a block behind, not stalking, studying. They'll test the words you use. They get better each night until you don't notice them anymore, until you hold a door without thinking. If you think one followed you home, the fix is simple. Not salt, not iron. Light. Leave a candle in the window till the jack-o'-lantern finally caves in on itself. Keep the porch light warm for 7 nights. Play a radio quietly. Static is best. They don't mind darkness, but they hate the end of Halloween season. Tomorrow, when you scroll your photos, count faces. If there's one you don't remember inviting, don't take it, don't ask, don't say a name. Blow out the candle at sunrise, relight it at dusk, and if someone thanks you from the porch, don't answer. Follow for new stories every night. Leave a light in the window and meet me by the fire tomorrow. Out on Highway 18, between the river curve and the dead orchard, there's a diner that keeps one jack-o'-lantern burning long after Halloween. They say if the flame ever dies, the night remembers what it lost. Old Man Kersey started the tradition after 78 when a driver swore he saw kids trick-or-treating at 3 a.m. in the freezing rain. They waved him down, faces painted like skeletons, but when he stopped, there were only candy wrappers caught in the fence. Since then, the diner keeps the candle burning every night until it caves in on itself. They say the light keeps the last ones from finding their way back across. The regulars joke about it, but no one ever forgets to relight it. Last year, a new kid named Ryan closed up alone, thought the whole thing was an old-timer prank. He snuffed the pumpkin, locked the door, and drove off into the fog. Halfway home, he saw the shape in the road, small, hunched, holding something. He slowed, blinked his brights, and it raised its head. No eyes, just hollow cuts, flickering orange inside like a carved grin. He slammed it in reverse. The radio popped to life. No station, just static, and a whisper. Lights out. Then every jack-o'-lantern in town, on porches, in trash cans, even half-rotten ones, flared bright for one heartbeat. He turned around, shaking, back to the diner. The windows were black, but the door stood open. Inside, the pumpkin sat on the counter, fresh again, grinning wide, flame burning blue. Cops found his truck idling outside at dawn, door open, radio still whispering. No sign of Ryan, only that same pumpkin on the counter, still lit, but carved with a new face. If you ever stop at Kersey's Diner after Halloween, don't ask about the pumpkin. Eat your pie, pay in cash, and when you leave, make sure that flame is still burning. We tell stories about the veil thinning, about ghosts and ancient things that walk once a year, but not every horror on Halloween comes from beyond the veil. Sometimes they come from right next door. This one didn't happen far from me. It was October 31st, 1973, Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. 9-year-old Lisa Ann French put on her orange jacket and a handmade costume and set out to trick-or-treat around her neighborhood. She'd promised her mom she'd be home after one more block. Back then, Halloween was different. Kids walked in groups, porch lights meant safety, and in a small town like that, everyone thought they could trust their neighbors. But when Lisa didn't come home that night, the lights stayed on longer than they ever had before. For 3 days, her town searched. Volunteers, neighbors, police, everyone, until a farmer outside of town found what they were looking for, and no one in Wisconsin's ever forgotten that night since. The man responsible wasn't a stranger. He lived just a few houses away. People used to say Halloween was for tricks and treats, but after that, no one in Fond du Lac left their porch lights on. No one let their children walk alone. For years, the town canceled trick-or-treating altogether. They say the spirits walk when the veil is thin, but that year in Fond du Lac, it wasn't the dead people were afraid of. Lisa's story became a warning, not about the things we imagine, but the things we overlook. So remember, the next time you light your pumpkin to scare the ghosts away, some monsters don't need an invitation. That's all for tonight's Fireside Tales, but there's always another story waiting for those who stay tuned. Click here to keep going and make sure you're subscribed. There's more waiting. New stories every night, and every Sunday we gather around the fire again. Until next time, stay close to the fire, and if you hear something just beyond the edge of the light, know you didn't. Thanks for tuning in.